Bureaucracy had always been a nightmare, but I thought it was just Earth's problem. Standing in line at the Galactic Embassy, I realized paperwork transcended planets. The form I was handed looked like a crossword puzzle designed by someone with 12 hands and no sense of humor. The clerk, a gray-skinned alien with 4 eyes that seemed permanently bored, shoved it toward me without explanation. I squinted at the rows of boxes, each written in symbols that only vaguely resembled language. Half the options contradicted each other, and the translation guide was written in broken English that didn't help. All I wanted was a work visa, 1 stamp, 1 signature, and I'd be free to explore the stars. But the more I stared, the more the page blurred. My pen hovered, my patience drained, and I finally checked a box at random. What's the worst that could happen, I thought. The worst, apparently, was destiny. The clerk stamped it with a wet thud, muttered something guttural, and waved me away as if I'd just signed for a package. I walked out smiling, relieved, convinced the headache was behind me. I had no idea the mistake I had just committed. 3 days later, I was jolted awake by the sound of horns. Not alarm clocks, not sirens, actual horns blaring outside my building. When I looked out the window, I saw a procession of alien vehicles glowing in ceremonial patterns. They stopped in front of my door. Then came the delegation, guards in polished armor, banners waving, and 3 women stepping forward like royalty out of a storybook. Each was different, but equally stunning in ways my tired brain couldn't process. The first stood tall, muscles defined, her posture sharp as a blade. Her eyes scanned the street like a soldier expecting attack. The second moved with fluid grace, her voice soft yet commanding when she spoke. Even without understanding every word, I felt like I should bow. The third smiled mischievously, her hands already fiddling with a strange device strapped to her hip. She radiated chaos, and yet it was oddly inviting. In unison, they declared me their husband. The street went silent. I laughed nervously, certain this was a prank, but no one else seemed to think so. One of the guards handed me a glowing document. My signature stared back at me in bold alien ink. The translation app chirped happily. Marriage union contract, legally binding, triple spouse arrangement. My stomach dropped. I tried to argue, babbling about clerical mistakes and misunderstandings, but the diplomat sister cut me off. Under galactic law, she explained calmly, the union is recognized, permanent, and celebrated. The warrior nodded in agreement, while the inventor sister winked like this was the funniest thing she'd seen all week. In desperation, I rushed to the embassy, waving the contract in protest. The same clerk barely looked up from his desk. Stamps official, he droned. No reversal, without violating interstellar treaty. His tone was final. I demanded alternatives. He shrugged. You could annul it, but that would insult the family, collapse diplomatic ties, and possibly start a war. That was the moment I realized how trapped I truly was. One careless mark on a form, one stamp from a tired clerk, and now 3 beautiful sisters called me husband. I was stuck between cosmic law, intergalactic politics, and the sharp gaze of 3 women who seemed to take my presence very seriously. The warrior eyed me like a soldier appraising a recruit. The diplomat studied me as if calculating my worth in negotiations. The inventor grinned, muttering about new experiments with human durability. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't the misunderstanding. It was marriage, alien style, and whether I liked it or not, my life had just been rewritten in ink that couldn't be erased. I woke up surrounded by walls that pulsed faintly with light, a house alive in ways I couldn't explain. Furniture hovered in midair, rotating lazily until I touched it, and it snapped obediently into place. The bed folded itself once I stood, and the floor shifted texture to cushion my steps. Everything screamed alien, yet I was expected to live here as if it were home. The sisters were already waiting. The warrior greeted me first, her arms crossed, eyes sharp. She spoke bluntly, reminding me that humans were fragile and needed protection. I couldn't decide if she was being kind or condescending. She shadowed me everywhere, inspecting every movement as though I were both partner and liability. The diplomat, in contrast, treated me like a representative. She explained daily schedules, meetings with local officials, etiquette I had to memorize if I didn't want to offend powerful neighbors. Her voice was gentle, but carried the weight of command. The inventor hardly gave me time to breathe. She dragged me into workshops full of contraptions that hissed, buzzed, and occasionally exploded. Her curiosity about humans bordered on reckless. Every few minutes she was testing reflexes, studying endurance, or strapping strange devices onto me with manic excitement. I tried insisting this was all a mistake, that I had no business being their husband, but every attempt was met with calm rebuttals. The diplomat recited the law, the warrior declared it an oath of honor, and the inventor found the whole argument hilarious. My protests bounced off them like pebbles against steel. Yet somewhere between the chaos, small moments slipped through. The warrior softened when I offered a simple thanks after she blocked a falling shard of metal in the workshop. The diplomat listened intently as I explained Earth's simple traditions, nodding as though they carried wisdom. The inventor's eyes lit up when I used duct tape to fix a device she'd abandoned as hopeless. What she considered crude improvisation struck her as genius. I began to see that what made me ordinary on Earth was extraordinary here. Meals turned into lessons in adaptation. The food shimmered, sometimes shifted shape mid-bite, and yet they watched eagerly as I tasted everything with unflinching stubbornness. The warrior called it bravery, the diplomat called it courtesy, and the inventor called it data. They saw strength in things I didn't even notice about myself. But underneath the laughter and awkward bonding, I couldn't ignore the shadow growing around me. Strangers stared too long in public. Whispers followed wherever we went. I overheard conversations hinting that my marriage wasn't just a private contract, but a political lightning rod. Some envied the sisters for securing me. Others muttered that a human had no right to stand among them. It wasn't just about affection or law. It was about power, alliances, and the balance of influence across worlds. That night, the diplomat placed a hand on my shoulder. "You must appear with us before the council," she said quietly. "Your presence will decide more than our household. It will decide how they see your entire species." The warrior's gaze hardened with agreement, while the inventor clapped gleefully, calling it an adventure. I lay awake after they left, realizing the truth. I wasn't just their husband by mistake anymore. I was about to become a symbol in a game I barely understood. The council chamber stretched wider than any stadium I had ever seen, filled with beings whose shapes defied imagination. Columns of light carried voices and languages I couldn't begin to decode, but all fell silent when I stepped forward flanked by the sisters. My stomach twisted, knowing I was nothing more than a human who had ticked the wrong box, yet here I was, husband by law, judged by an audience that saw me as either pawn or prize. The diplomat guided me with calm precision, whispering what to say, how to stand, when to bow. The warrior scanned the chamber for threats, hand never far from the hilt of her weapon. The inventor waved cheerfully at dignitaries, as if this were a carnival. And me? I wanted to melt into the floor. Yet when the questioning began, something changed. Delegates accused me of fraud, demanded my annulment, or argued that humans had no place meddling in galactic affairs. Their voices thundered, but the more they tried to box me in, the more I saw how tangled their politics really were. Every insult, every demand, was wrapped in layers of protocol that achieved nothing. When they asked me to defend my presence, I spoke plainly. I told them I was just a man who made a mistake, that humans were not masters of bureaucracy, but we understood commitment once we gave it. My words were clumsy compared to their polished rhetoric, yet the chamber quieted. Where they expected games, I gave them honesty, and honesty cut deeper than their posturing. But not everyone was convinced. Rumors spread quickly. Humans might use this marriage to slip into power. Earth could gain a voice it had never earned. To some, I was a threat that needed to be erased. It began with whispers, then veiled threats, and finally open hostility. On the way back from the council, shadows detached from alleys, blades glinting in alien hands. The warrior intercepted them, movements fast and lethal, her presence saving me before I even understood the danger. Still, the message was clear. I wasn't welcome, and my death would solve problems for many. Fear clawed at me, but so did responsibility. I could have demanded to go home, wash my hands of the entire mess, but the sisters stood by me without hesitation. They defended me as if I truly belonged to them, and in their eyes I saw expectation I couldn't ignore. Running would not only dishonor them, it would put Earth in jeopardy. That night, the diplomat explained the ultimatum delivered behind closed doors. Either I accepted the marriage and stood as their lawful husband, or sanctions would fall on my planet. Earth, small and unprepared, would suffer for my cowardice. I lay awake in a palace bed that wasn't mine, staring at walls that pulsed with quiet light, realizing there was no more pretending. What began as a mistake had escalated into a test of whether one human could survive in the heart of alien politics. The next council meeting would not just determine my fate, it would decide the role of my entire species in a galaxy that had never taken us seriously. I had spent sleepless nights convincing myself there was a way out, but by the time the council reconvened, I knew escape wasn't an option. The sisters stood at my side, their gaze steady, as if daring me to finally act like the husband fate had made me. I walked into that chamber no longer as the man who had blundered through a form, but as someone who had chosen to bear the weight of what followed. The accusations came again, sharper this time. They called me an imposter, a parasite, a symbol of Earth's ambition. Instead of shrinking, I leaned into the absurd truth. I told them I had been foolish, that humans made mistakes all the time, but unlike others, we turned those mistakes into something worthwhile. Where they saw a clerical error, I saw opportunity. Where they demanded annulment, I spoke of responsibility. I reminded them that humanity had survived not because we were the strongest or the cleverest, but because we refused to quit when the universe stacked the odds against us. Some laughed, others scoffed, but I didn't stop. I pointed to the sisters and admitted I hadn't chosen this union, yet in every test, every trial, they had shown me loyalty, and I had chosen to return it. If law bound us by accident, then choice bound us by honor. That was something no bureaucracy could overwrite. The chamber stilled. For the first time, silence carried respect instead of contempt. When rivals tried to shout me down, I turned their own laws on them. Hidden clauses, half-forgotten treaties. The diplomat had whispered the hints, but it was my outsider's perspective that strung them together. I wasn't playing their game. I was rewriting the rules, using common sense where they had drowned in ritual. They didn't expect a human to outmaneuver them in their own language of law, and when their protests collapsed under their own contradictions, the balance shifted. The decision was announced. My marriage stood, my role recognized, and Earth gained its first foothold in galactic politics. The warrior's pride burned in her eyes, the diplomat's relief softened her voice, and the inventor clapped so loudly the chamber echoed. Against every odd, the mistake had become legitimacy. Later, as the celebration roared through the palace, I slipped away for air. I thought about how one rushed signature had entangled me in something larger than I had ever imagined. And yet, standing there beneath alien stars, I wasn't afraid anymore. Humanity had proven itself not by strength or wealth, but by stubbornness, creativity, and a refusal to bow. I had proven myself by embracing the mistake instead of running from it. When the sisters found me, the inventor shoved another form into my hands with a grin. The warrior warned me to read carefully, and the diplomat sighed in amusement. The paper glowed faintly, far too many boxes waiting to be checked. I laughed, shook my head, and signed anyway. This time it wasn't a slip, it was a choice.